Truthfully, what happens is, as children grow up, we start to educate them progressively from the waist up. And then we focus on their heads and slightly to one side.
I think in the old days, you were better off. Because nowadays, they're all specialists. Everyone's becoming better and better. And less and less. And eventually someone's going to be superb. Like nothing.
Our education system has mined our minds in the way that we strip mined the earth for a particular commodity. And for the future, it won't serve us. We have to rethink the fundamental principles on which we're educating our children.
We're not here to tell everybody that they're wrong and we're right. We're not saying that we have all the answers, but we'd like to present a different way of looking at it.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to China Jeducation, episode 43. My name is Andrew Maul, and I am a PYP cover teacher at Dresden International School in Dresden, Germany.
Yes, all the way from Dresden, Germany. Welcome to the China Jeducation show. Another teacher from all around the world, and a first, I believe, from Germany. Andrew, start us off. Why, how did you get to Dresden in Germany?
Well, I married into it. So my wife, Alicia, is a music teacher, and we dated long distance for several years while I was working in Italy, in my previous life working for the U.S. government. And we ended up getting married, and we decided after a couple of years in Italy that we would pursue, again, her international teaching career. Moved to Uzbekistan, lived there for 3 years, and then after 3 years in Uzbekistan, went through the recruitment process, which then brought us here to Dresden.
Okay, so your wife is from where?
She's from Michigan in the United States, and I'm from Florida, but we have this kind of international dating story, which brought us together in Italy. We like to say we met in Venice, which sounds very romantic, but we actually saw each other for the first time at the airport. It just happened to be the Venice airport, so.
Well, that works, yeah.
It works. Yeah.
So you met in an airport in Venice.
That's right.
I'm sorry, give us a few more details. What, you were kind of just walking along and your bag hit her bag and you looked up?
No, it was arranged because we'd previously both lived and worked in Bahrain, which is an island in the Persian Gulf off the coast of Saudi Arabia. I was there doing government stuff, and my wife was teaching at an international school in Bahrain. We were there at different times but knew different people, and they ended up introducing us vicariously through Facebook. And we got to chatting, and she had a wedding that she was attending in northern Italy because she has family there, and asked me if I wanted to be her blind date to the wedding. And then I drove up and met her at the airport, and one thing led to another, and here we are 7 years later.
Wow. And that was the first time you actually physically met in Venice Airport?
It was, yeah, it was.
Wow. Amazing story. So I have to say, I'll tell the listeners, looking at your bio and that you are quite a well-travelled gentleman. We probably need quite a few hours to go into all the places you've been. But just to take you back, you said you worked for the US government. Just so we can let the listeners know, that wasn't teaching. That was, what was it? Some kind of undercover stuff, Andrew? What were you up to there before the teaching started?
Nothing undercover or clandestine, I promise you. No, I was a logistician, so pretty boring job, but very interesting in that I got to travel all over the world and go to a lot of very interesting countries and meet a lot of cool people. And I did that for 8 years. And it was after 6 years that I met Alicia, and we decided after 2 more years that we'd leave that behind and continue on this international teaching journey, which we're on today.
And choosing to head into teaching, I mean, there must have been obviously quite a few reasons, but you've travelled and lived working for the US civil service across Europe, you've said Africa, Southwest and Central Asia. I mean, just off the top of the head, what was the most favourite country you've lived in?
As far as living, I've only lived in 3 countries, and that's Italy, Bahrain, Uzbekistan. I'm sorry, not Uzbekistan, not with the civil service. We did that when we decided to continue on the teaching career. But Italy, Bahrain, the United States were the 3 countries that I lived in working for the U.S. government. But yeah, since then, also Uzbekistan and Germany. So the other countries I just did, for work. So 30 countries professionally in some sort of work capacity, and then a total, I think, of 55 countries if you include all the places that I've visited on my own in the meantime.
And the diplomatic, very governmental answer would be, I enjoyed all the countries. They all have good points, right?
Well, that would be the diplomatic answer, yeah. But I'd have to say that one of the most interesting places I visited, probably the most beautiful country in Africa, is Malawi. If I ever had a chance to go back to Malawi in Africa, I would definitely do that. There are other places that I went for my job that, I didn't appreciate so much. But I think Malawi was one of the ones that sticks out in my mind as the most beautiful and the most memorable.
Now, I remember an old school friend of mine, Alan Ritchie. Funny how we just remember names. I haven't spoken to him for years. His father was, I can't remember the name for someone that studies insects. How terribly bad of me. But he actually was a scientist based in Malawi. And actually, the Lake Malawi, is as big as, listeners, Wales in the United Kingdom. Did you know that, Andrew?
It is a big lake. I've seen the lake. One of the sites that we were working on was right on Lake Malawi. Yeah, it's a big lake. I think they have ferries that go across it and whatnot too. You shouldn't swim in it though, from what I've been told, because I'm sure your friend could tell you there's an insect that can burrow into your skin and then come out months later. So that doesn't sound very pleasant. So we stayed out of the water.
I'm just thinking, I actually just said on air that the Lake Malawi is as big as Wales. I mean, I hope I got that right. The researchers are nodding to me it is right, because that's just come off my head. I mean, unless I was lied to, but it is a big lake, right? I mean, but Wales is not a massive country, but it suggests to me, I mean, I've driven across Wales. That must be a big lake.
I've been to Wales myself, and you're right, it's big. I wouldn't have necessarily compared it to the size of Lake Malawi, but if you're, I'm sure that's a correct statistic. I'm sure we could look it up.
I am being told I've got the thumbs up, but there you go. I mean, wherever that came from, we've always got to question the source as well. But anyway, on that note, let's dive into the game, shall we? Guess the gap.
Oh, we chat waiting, me. We chat waiting, come to my party.
Okay, so guess the gap, Andrew. I'm going to give you a famous quote to do with education, teaching, and there's going to be a word or a few words left out, and you've got to guess what goes in it. Before I give you it, of course, no cheating on Google or anything like that. Not that I say you possibly would. Obviously, working with the government, you'd never do such a thing. Here we go, then. Teachers, not in it for the income, in it for the blank. We'll come back to it at the end, Andrew, and see how you do. Right, so let's talk more about your story then. Where'd you come from?
Originally, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. Right. I don't have to give my birth date or anything like that, I hope.
Absolutely
but
not.
I'm not. Okay, good. Yeah, so originally I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, but then when I was 6 weeks old, moved to Florida. Not my choice, obviously, being an infant, but my mom and dad needed to change locations, so we moved to a town called Pensacola, which is on the central Gulf Coast of the United States. Stayed there for most of my formative years, and then moved again to Tampa, Florida, which is about 8 hours on the highway from Pensacola in Central Florida. And that's where I went to high school and then on to university from there. So Georgia is where I was born, but I'm really from Florida. I mean, I spent the majority of my childhood there.
Okay, and you said you went to college, university. That was in Florida too, right?
Yeah, no, after high school, went to the University of Central Florida, which is in Orlando. People ask me all the time if I went to Disney World all the time, and I said, well, I was a college student. I didn't actually have a lot of money, so no, I didn't go to Disney World all the time, even though it was right down the road. But yeah, I went to University of Central Florida, and then in 2006 is when I graduated. Decided to get out of the state and move to Virginia, which is where I started my career with the civil service.
What did you study in college?
So It's nothing to do with anything that I've done in my professional life. Growing up in Florida and being surrounded by tourism and hospitality, I thought it might be fun to major in hospitality management. So
Okay.
that's what I did. Um, Come to find out that, after learning a lot about the industry, that it wasn't necessarily something that I had any interest in actually pursuing professionally. Because when do people who run restaurants and when do people who work at theme parks and manage cruise ships and that kind of thing? Well, they're the ones who are working when all of your friends are out enjoying themselves. So I had no desire to do that. I wanted to have more of a normal life, and so decided to pursue a career in logistics with the U.S. government.
I tell you what, though, Andrew, sometimes I do feel like I'm in hospitality management as I allow the students to come into my classroom every day. Some of them, it's almost like bringing them into breakfast. Oh, would you like to sit down there? Oh, lovely. Is that comfortable enough for you, sir? So I think there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of
No,
that.
Yeah, it's definitely relevant in terms of, the root of the industry, event planning and logistics and that kind of thing. I mean, everything that we're doing in schools and in our classrooms. And my previous job at Tashkent International School, for example, where I was the activities coordinator, a lot of my background in planning and event management came into play there. So I'm definitely grateful for the educational experience I had, even though, most people wouldn't immediately think that it's relevant. It definitely has relevance to what I do today.
Question from our researchers. Being a student in Orlando, we're thinking that perhaps the government would have given you, a little subsidy to go and use the theme parks when you're not studying. Is that not the case? You don't get like a student discount?
Well, as a Florida resident, you do get a discount to visit the theme parks. You can get like
2%
an annual pass for $100, I think. I'm sure that's much more expensive today than it was then.
All right.
But yeah, there's a Florida resident discount that gets you in. But I had nothing to do with the government when I was in Orlando. That didn't start until after I graduated from university. So.
I'm still looking for an excuse. Well, my excuse is already made. My 4 children, but I'm wondering. I want to go there to Disney World and all the other places because, of course, there's loads of them, right? When they're probably about 4, because I think they're a bit young before that. They need to be walking and talking and able to go on the rides. Although, actually, probably not at 4 years of age. They're not going to go on most of the rides, are they? They'd be too small.
Yeah, I don't understand these parents who decide they need to drag their infants to theme parks. It sounds like a miserable experience. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Yeah, we'll have to wait till they get a little bit taller. I need to work that one out. Yes, you're absolutely right, especially when there's massive queues and the sun's beating down. Okay, let's move away from that thought. Terrible experience. Right, so in terms of, growing up in Georgia and moving to Florida and all that stuff, going through your schools, favorite teacher that comes to mind, Andrew, that sticks out there?
Yeah, I got this question beforehand, and I was trying to think of a teacher outside of elementary school, and I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really kind of plays into why I've decided to go into teaching and elementary education specifically, because elementary ed, not many people have that many memories from their elementary school experience, but I remember several teachers in elementary school.
Yeah.
Number one, I think, has got to be my second grade teacher, Miss Tooney, just for the sheer fact that she understood me, as a 7 turning 8-year-old kid, hyperactive boy, usually a lot of times, especially back in the day, tend to be written off as, it's like, oh, they're just boys and they're being crazy or whatnot. But no, I think that Miss Tooney, she understood me, she appreciated me, and was able to kind of use my interests to turn it into a very valuable learning experience for me growing up as a kid. And just to this day, I mean, I have no idea where Miss Tooney is today, but she was definitely my favorite teacher growing up for sure.
Yeah, again, so many teachers go back to those elementary years, and it has really nothing to do with the content of what they're studying. There just seems to be a very time where I think as a child you really do look up for those kind of figures, to imitate or to be inspired by, and it's character forming. And again, why I love teaching that age group, Andrew. So you talked about earlier, you worked for the government for about 8 years, which you went to do after you did university and things like that. How did the teaching come about? You mentioned your wife, of course. She was a teacher at the time. You met in Venice airport. Take us, how did then the teaching connection get in? Because I guess one of my questions is, why would you leave a solid job in the government where you're going around lots of different places, whether it be boring or not, like you said, to then kind of say, hey, let's become a teaching family, right?
Yeah, a lot of people, I'm sure, have wondered why I left a tenured civil service position that paid really well. No one's ever actually asked me, though. So this is a cool opportunity. No, I mean, I think that I've always had it in my mind that I need to be doing something professionally that I feel is making a tangible difference. And working for the government, serving my country, yes, that was making a difference on some level, but it wasn't doing for me, I think, what it needed to in terms of my take-home feel-good factor at the end of the day. I've always worked with kids ever since before university. I grew up in a church. My mom's a pastor, so I've always been connected to this idea of kind of like giving back to the youth, and having had a lot of mentors in my life growing up. It's been very important for me to do that as well. So. Yeah, how did I get into it? I volunteered for organizations, youth mentorship organizations when I was overseas the first couple of years. There's an organization called Military Community Youth Ministries, or Club Beyond, which the military community has a lot of kids in it who, they move all the time. They're losing their friends a lot, moving from place to place. Third culture kids as well. I participated in a lot of conferences and like summer camp type atmosphere places where I was able to connect with a lot of people who were in this field, reaching out to third culture kids. And that's kind of the international teaching connection, because after a couple of years in Italy, I went to Bahrain for a year and was really kind of trying to decide what I was going to do with my life. Not even having yet met my wife. So this is going back about 8 years actually, having to decide what I wanted to do if I was going to leave the civil service. And one of the thoughts I had was, oh, I could go into teaching. I looked at some master's degree options, but never actually went through with it. I continued to volunteer with youth organizations and ended up moving back to Europe and setting further down the path of my career with the civil service. So until I met my wife, she told me when we were dating that she didn't want to marry a teacher. So it's like, okay, great. I'm not a teacher, so this is perfect. So continued and then eventually decided that, you know what, we're going to follow your career. And while we're in Uzbekistan, which is where she was teaching, and I didn't have a teaching job there, obviously, I worked on my master's degree. Okay. And ended up getting a job at the school. And once I was working at the school, that's when I decided, you know what, this is something that I might actually want to pursue. I had some friends and colleagues at TIS, at Tashkent International School, who were also going through career changes and had gone through teacher certification programs, and a bunch of different programs were recommended to me. But again, while I was in Uzbekistan, didn't end up pursuing it because I had a good job at the school as the activities coordinator. I didn't need a teaching license for that. And it wasn't until we moved to Germany that I realized that in order to be taken seriously professionally, I was going to need to have a credential. And that's what brought me to the Teach Now teacher certification program, which seemed like the quickest path for me to licensure. And I figured that would be the best and quickest option to, hopefully be taken seriously professionally in order to get a full-time job eventually as a teacher.
I mean, I can imagine, like in Germany where you are, you wouldn't be able to be employed, would you, without an actual professional accredited license, right?
I think that as far as the visa process goes for hiring teachers internationally, yes, you have to have some sort of degree or professional qualification in order to be brought in. However, since I came here as a trailing spouse, that didn't apply to me at the time, and I was just brought in under a spousal visa. Actually, you know what? We came to Germany on our tourist visas because being Americans, you can come to the EU, to the Schengen zone without a visa, and then you just go to the Dresden Welcome Center, the Ausländerbehörde, the foreigner registration office, and they take you through all the paperwork requirements there, along with the representative from the school, obviously. But it was never a question for me in terms of whether I was going to be able to stay because we're married and she's the one with the job, and it was easy to just fall in and start our lives as German residents in that case.
Okay, but Andrew, I mean, now you're working in Germany at the same school as your wife. Is that a case of you needed that now? The Teach Now certification was really essential to be able to be a teacher, doing your elementary stuff.
The teaching certification is necessary, I think, to get full-time employment at not just at our school now, but at any international school. If I want to recruit, for example, through Search Associates, then I'm going to need to have a teaching certificate in order to be taken seriously as a candidate. So at our school, there are certain levels at which you can come in. You can work in the morning care, after school care program. That's how a lot of people got their start at the school in terms of their full-time teaching careers.
Right.
For me, we've only been here about 2 years. But yeah, when we first moved here, I didn't even work at the school. I went to German language school during the day because Alicia was working full-time and I needed something to do to keep myself from going crazy. So the idea was that I would learn German and get a white-collar job somewhere in Dresden. But Dresden is not an international cosmopolitan city like Berlin or Frankfurt or Munich. So there aren't hardly, I mean, you know what? There aren't any jobs really for foreigners that are speaking English. So if you want to get an English-speaking job in Germany, you better find yourself in a place like Berlin or Frankfurt or Munich and get a job with an international company. And most of these expat positions are mid or senior management positions that, the company's home office in Houston or New York or something has sent the employee here as a typical expat assignment. So you can't just show up and expect to get a job as an English speaker in Germany unless you're working in an international school, which I am. So
going back to the Teach Now program where you got your teaching credential from, Andrew, what do you think the most important kind of golden nugget did you learn from it that you're using now in the classroom? Apart from obviously getting the official paperwork, which of course is essential now for most, what I'd say, professional international schools.
Yeah, the paperwork is definitely essential. But as far as golden nuggets go, I think I had this idea in my mind of what it meant to manage a classroom before I started the program. And I was subbing at the school here even before I started my formal teacher training. So, they were thankful to have somebody who had a lot of experience working in international schools already, not necessarily in a teaching capacity, but someone who has youth mentorship experience and who's worked in schools before. So I ticked those boxes, but without the teaching qualification, my upward mobility was certainly limited. But stepping into the classroom for the first time, you can have all the experience in the world with kids, and that's not going to prepare you to be able to manage a classroom in terms of the classroom management side of things. So the most valuable thing that I've gotten out of the Teach Now program has been that mentorship, not just from my mentor here at DIS, but also through my instructors in the Teach Now program, really kind of helping me develop my classroom management skills so that I can run a classroom and have it be a much more rewarding experience, not just for me professionally, but also to have some really positive learning outcomes as a result.
Okay, well, let's get more into your current teaching position then.
Work, the con is on. The time has come for procrastination.
So, Andrew, tell me about your current school in Dresden. What's the official name of it?
So the official name of our school is Dresden International School. We are a preschool all the way through grade 12, IB World School. So we have the PYP, the MYP, and the IB diploma program.
I mean, a lot of teachers I speak to now, obviously abroad, are doing the IB program, International Baccalaureate program. Being a kind of a newish teacher, based on the background that we've talked about today, is it something that, does the school give you a lot of training in the IB realm? A lot of teachers say to me, oh, to get into an IB school, you need to have IB certification. But it seems to be, if I take the general comments from most experienced teachers, that really once you're in, if you show a good interest in wanting to be in an IB school and you get in, that's when the training and the personal development happens. How's that been for you?
I've been really thankful for the professional development opportunities that the school's given me, even as a cover teacher. The IB is inquiry-based, as I'm sure you know, and I think that wrapping my mind around that and what it looks like in terms of implementation in the classroom has been a really cool experience. I'm scheduled to take a course here in the next couple of months called Making the PYP Happen, Implementing Agency. So that is, I think, the Tier 1 IB training that I need to go through just for me professionally. It's not something that I think is required in order to teach at the school, because we have people teaching at the school who don't have any prior IB experience. But yeah, I think the best experience you can get as far as IB training is actually working in an IB school and seeing how it's implemented. So that's been a very valuable experience for me.
Are you looking to further your career in education? Teach Now offers a convenient online teacher preparation and master's degree program completed anywhere in the world.
Reach now for Teach Now. Ain't no time for defeat now. Teachers get off your seats now. Future generations need you now.
Work with people all over the world in a collaborative, activity-based teaching environment.
To learn more, visit teach-now.edu.
Expertise that is really outside of the box.
Are you, obviously you're there with your wife who teaches at the same school, but are you there with other family, children?
Yeah, we came here, just my wife and I, but since we arrived, we did add another tiny human into the equation. So we've got a 5-month-old son who arrived in August, and yeah, it's been a life-changing experience. If I had one recommendation, actually, for people who are going through a teacher training program, it's to not do it at the same time that you have an infant in the house, because it is a lot of work going through a teacher training program. And when you have a baby, as I'm sure you know, having kids yourself, it sucks away all of your available time. So that's been a challenge.
Yeah, maybe on the Teach Now program website they should have a disclaimer: do not do if you're having to manage a newborn. Although saying that, Andrew, you're certainly not the first person that's had to go through it with. I remember one of them on my cohort, a lady, was having twins. And as we progressed, every week she'd get bigger and bigger. And then at some point she did, obviously, I think, have to put the program on pause. But that's a good thing with the Teach Now, right? You can pause it if you have extenuating circumstances and come back to it. So it is, I think that's pretty advantageous, isn't it? It is slightly flexible to those things. But brilliant. Okay, well, congrats on the birth of your first boy. We also have a 3-month-year-old, actually 3-month-old baby as well. And, well, if you're going to have any more, don't have 4. Right, anyway, moving on. Let's talk about, here's one thing, actually, about now you guys are in Dresden in Germany, you'd call Western Europe. In terms of, because you worked before in Uzbekistan, in terms of the money side of things, obviously don't need to go into actual figures, but, can you save there as much as, say, you could in an international school in Uzbekistan? Because those ones that tend to be in the far-out countries, they have to pay a bit more, do they not, Andrew? So they can get teachers like you over there and stay in there. Whereas, obviously, when you go to Germany, there's a lot more teachers, there's a lot more kind of demand for wanting to be in Western Europe. How does that work in your experience?
I think that schools in Western Europe have going for them. The number one thing they have going for them is that they are located in Western Europe. And a lot of people, as you just said, would really like to come work in Western Europe. So the financial side of things, you're right. It's not a money-saving opportunity the way it is in Central Asia or Eastern Europe. Um, Tashkent International School being located in Uzbekistan, yes, it's a doubly landlocked country. However, they don't have, I think, the level of compensation package that you would think for being such an isolated location. However, the
Right.
cost of living there is so low that the savings opportunity and the savings potential, I guess you should say, is very high. So yeah, they may not have the most lucrative package, but I think when you compare that to the cost of living, it's really really good. And just speaking of the difference of Eastern and Western Europe, I mean, here we are in Dresden, right? So
Hmm.
Berlin is 2 hours straight north of us by train, and Prague is 2 hours directly south of us by train.
Wow.
International School of Prague is one of those, they consider it a top tier school. They're one of the schools, and Poland too, because Poland's only 2 hours away to the east. We're surrounded, like here, in a border region in East Germany. Poland and Czech Republic are considered Eastern Europe, and your packages there are going to provide you with flights home. They're going to provide you with housing. Not the same story here, just the other side of the border in Germany. Um, we do okay, but we have to pay German taxes. We have to find our own apartment and pay for it.
All right.
But one of the things that I find most refreshing about living in Western Europe and working at an international school is that there is no difference in terms of um, professional respect or salary between us and our local colleagues. So, for example, you might have
Right.
local colleagues at a school in Southwest Asia or Southeast Asia, or in Central Europe or Eastern Europe or Central Asia, and there's a big discrepancy in terms of the package just because you happen to be a local. You could be just as well qualified as the guy they fly in from Australia, but he's probably making 10 times more than you and has
Mm.
a mansion to live in and annual flights home and that kind of thing. So we're normal people here in Germany, and that's been a refreshing change, I think, from our experience working in international schools in other parts of the world.
Very, very good point, Andrew. Uh, I think you mentioned it earlier in terms of actually getting your job where you are now in Dresden. So you started off, as you said, learning German. Your wife got the actual contract. And then as you were there, the case came where a door opened, right?
Yeah, so the door opened and I stepped through it. At first I didn't have that many hours, but I think that they've realized that I'm a real asset to the school now,
Mm.
and I'm almost full time in terms of the number of hours I'm working as a cover teacher. The system here for subs is pretty good because you don't have nearly as many not as much extra help in the classroom in terms of teaching assistants and that kind of thing. Just because, like I said, with this difference between Eastern and Western Europe, there's
Mm.
no pay gap between local and international colleagues, and I think that might have something to do with the availability of teaching assistants and whatnot, just for budgetary reasons. Schools in
Mm.
Western Europe can't afford to have a TA in every single classroom. So when the homeroom teacher is out, boom, they need a cover teacher, and that's where I come in. And as a result, I've had experience working across all grade levels in the PYP, all the way from kindergarten up through grade 5. And I get quite a lot of work even in a school our size, which is about 500 students.
Mm. So, in terms of Dresden, how is the city? How are you finding it? And of course, it's got when we think of Dresden, you obviously sadly think of World War II and what happened there. But as far as it goes, how are you guys finding it?
Dresden is such a great city. I think it's one of those. I hate this term in tourism circles, but it really is kind of like a hidden gem of Germany. It's a
Mm.
major German city, but not a lot of tourists know about it, so it's
Right.
not as crowded. Prague is right down the road, and if you've ever been to Prague, you know that the place is just packed with tourists from all over the world. Dresden has attractions and monuments that are on the same level as Prague, if not better. Um, 1,000 years ago, the electors of Saxony They were based here in Dresden, and all the way up through the 19th century, Saxony was its own country. And it wasn't until Germany became one country after all the kingdoms decided to come together that it was, formally a German city. So it's Saxon first, and even today, Dresden is the capital of the Free State of Saxony in the Bundesrepublik Deutschland. So today, Dresden has all the treasures of Saxony and museums that are world class, art collections that are just out of this world, amazing architecture. And yeah, you mentioned the bombings at the end of the Second World War, which were certainly tragic. But the city has, since the fall of communism, really done a good job of rebuilding a lot of the historic town center. The Frauenkirche, which is the big German Lutheran church in the center, has been rebuilt since reunification of East and West Germany, and is once again, the symbol of the city. So I'm sure that before the war, it was this magical place that was actually known as Florence on the Elbe, because the Elbe is the river that goes through Dresden, and of course, Florence in Italy. So it was at that same level in terms of culture and art, and that a lot of that has been preserved and restored. And it's such a great city to be. Not many people speak English here because it's not a major German city, but you've got all those benefits of a big international city without it actually being such a huge city. So we take the tram to work every day. Public transport's amazing. We've got the S-Bahn and great high-speed train links to the rest of Europe. We've got an airport that has some really decent connections. We have a new flight now on Ryanair that goes straight to London 3 times a week. So it's really well connected. Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and I think that a place to raise a kid, especially. A lot of people are having babies here. It's amazing. There are babies everywhere. There's pregnant people everywhere. So it's a baby boom town, and so we've fallen in with the locals in that respect, and that we come to Dresden, we have a baby. There must be something in the water. So we're happy. We're very happy here. Definitely happy here.
Great, and I think, as you said earlier, the fact that it's so close to, we're on the border of Eastern Europe, that really makes for some great road trips, doesn't it, over the years that have you done any so far, Andrew?
We actually don't have a car, but yeah, we've rented a car a couple times, and we've driven into the Czech Republic once or twice. We did a road trip to Italy back in April of last year, which was fun. We rented this tiny little Volkswagen Up. It's like the smallest car in their fleet. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And driving that up over the Alps.
Not with 4 children. I don't think I'd
ever.
No,
you're right. But yeah, just imagine the smallest possible Volkswagen, and then try to drive that up over a mountain pass through the Alps and into Italy. And that's what we did, with the gas pedal all the way down, just kind of like struggling to keep up with traffic.
Yeah, brilliant.
But no, I mean, yeah, you're right. Road trips from here into Eastern Europe and down to Italy. I mean, we're in Western Europe, so yeah, the travel opportunities here are really, really great.
Yeah, making me jealous. But now you've come from Uzbekistan, which it's like day and night compared to where you are in Dresden. I mean, what favorite things to you personally or as a family are you really enjoying since moving from Central Asia?
I mean, it is night and day difference between Uzbekistan and Germany. I mean, the grass literally is greener in Western Europe. So I think that, we didn't have the baby when we moved to Germany. But, when we first got here, just trying to get ourselves settled, we arrived in June of 2018. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. So we've been here a little bit over 18 months now. And I mean, it's not our first time living in Western Europe, because when I was working for the government, we lived in Italy, and I was there for 6 years and traveled extensively throughout Western Europe at that time as well. But we've really been enjoying city life, European city life, as opposed to Uzbek city life. Don't have a car. We came here knowing that we wouldn't get one, because that's one of our goals, is to live without a car. Whereas in Uzbekistan, we had a driver who took us everywhere because the public transport is okay. It's just not great, especially for getting to work when we were in Tashkent. Yeah, I mean, just, popping around to the grocery store a couple times a week rather than once a week, and, going to the bakery, and, the great museums, and just architecture from previous eras. We've had that in Tashkent too, with the architectural wonders, but it's different. It's not the same as being in Western Europe. So I think there's this kind of romantic idea of living in Europe, and we definitely have that here in Dresden. So we're happy about that.
So what's different from teaching, would you say, Andrew, in Dresden to Uzbekistan? Any kind of big differences?
I think, the makeup of our school here in Dresden is completely different from the makeup of our school in Tashkent. We're about the same size. Tashkent International School, 550 students. Dresden International School, around 500. The big difference is that Tashkent being a major capital city, we have all of the embassy kids and international businesses that have their personnel stationed there. So it's a completely different community atmosphere. We had a cap on enrollment, I think, in Tashkent. I don't know. I think it's something like 25% have to be more. In anything over 25%, they have to be international. So 25% local kids, and 75% like truly international. So we have that like true international feel in Tashkent. We had like the annual UN Day celebration because all the UN agencies are headquartered there. But then here in Dresden, we have kind of a hybrid system. So we're required to offer the German language curriculum because we have about 50% of our students are actually local kids,
right,
that come from German families. But we also have a lot of international companies that have factories and that kind of thing here, because Dresden and Saxony is kind of considered like the Silicon Valley of Germany. So a lot of high-tech businesses have offices here, and if they're not staff kids that come from international countries, then it's kids who have families that work in the high-tech sector that send their kids to our school. So about 50% German and then 50% international. It's a big Russian community here as well. We have quite a few students from China and Japan and Korea as well. But yeah, the language on the playground that you hear most is German, whereas the language you heard on the playground the most in Uzbekistan was Russian and English. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, wow. And as a PYP teacher there in Dresden International School, what's a big challenge that you've come up across? Because clearly the living, in comparison to the previous job, doesn't seem as much of a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, life in Western Europe is really easy. And it wasn't difficult in Tashkent. It was just different. But at the school, I think that it's more of the difference in community. So I talked about the makeup of the student body, but in terms of the community atmosphere as well, like here in Dresden, people have their normal lives at the end of the day, whereas in Tashkent, the center of the community was kind of the school. So they had a lot more happening after school and on the weekends, whereas here people just tend to go home at the end of the day and very little happens on the weekends. So the kids have their friends at school, and I think socialize with them outside of school as well. But there's not that same connection in terms of the community that there was here in Dresden as there was in Tashkent. It's not a bad thing. It's just different because people have different priorities here in Dresden than they did living in Uzbekistan.
Which one would you kind of move towards more the school being more of the community center, or as it is now where you are?
I don't, that's a difficult question. We really appreciated the community in Tashkent, but we have a lot more local friends here in Dresden.
Right.
So I think as an international teacher, you kind of find your social outlets where you can. And a lot of times, if you're working in a more austere location, that community tends to be centered around the school. Whereas if you're living in an English-speaking country or a country with a big expat community, or a school like Dresden International School, where it's more family oriented, then you end up finding more local friends who want to socialize with you. So, I'd say it's 50-50. We like what we have here. We like what we had there. We're happy to be in Western Europe, but we made it work in Tashkent. So I think if you're an international teacher, the number one thing you have to ask yourself before you pursue that career track is, are you going to be comfortable living wherever you happen to get a job? And for us, that answer is yes, and we make it work no matter what country we live in.
Great answers, Andrew. Not that we need any magic, I don't believe, as we're doing this podcast, but it's time for Magic One Time. Yeah, here we go. We're gonna dance to the left-hand side. Nice and quick answers, if you can roll them off. One word or one-liners. The first one is, here we go, favorite game you like to play in your class, Andrew?
It's a game called Musical Statues.
Favorite tech tool you use in class?
We use the smartboard quite a lot in the class.
And favorite sentence you like to say to your students?
1, 2, 3, eyes on me.
If I could wave a magic wand, what could I give you, Andrew, that could help your classroom or school at this very moment?
Keeping in the theme of classroom management, something that, you could snap your fingers or wave your magic wand and immediately make all the kids in your classroom completely enamored in whatever you're doing and pay attention.
Yeah, I think what you need to get is one of those electric shock mechanisms. You link them up to under each chair. That'll get them to turn around. Okay, did I say that on air? Terrible of me. I was only joking, listeners. And finally, give us your favourite teacher's tip, tool, website, resource, or person of educational inspiration.
I'd have to say that in terms of resources, Teachers Pay Teachers is a fantastic resource. Planning has always been my number one area in terms of like positive feedback. But you can spend a lot of time planning as a teacher, and why reinvent the wheel when there are a lot of great lessons and resources already out there that you can tweak to work how you need them in your classroom. So Teachers Pay Teachers. Okay, indeed. Great. Right, let's get back into Guess the Gap, shall we?
Oh, we chat waiting, we chat waiting, we chat waiting me. We chat waiting, come to my party.
Guess the Gap then. Here we go. I'll give you the quote. Apparently it's another anonymous one. I can't give you any source that perhaps could help you, Andrew. Here we go. Teachers not in it for the income, in it for the blank. What do you think it is?
I really had to rack my brain on this one, and I have heard various iterations of this in the past, but, not in it for the income, in it for the students. The students is, I think, my best answer.
Good. Well, as I like to say, well done with the creative input. I'm afraid it's wrong.
Okay.
Here we go. Don't be too shaved. Teachers, not in it for the income, listeners. In it for the outcome. Listen to that cheese.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's really, really good. Yeah.
But yours was too. And as we always do, before we finish, Andrew, to the listeners who want to perhaps get in touch, thinking about moving to Germany, perhaps, are interested in your PYP experience, either there or what you were doing in Uzbekistan, we'll put your contact details on the show notes. In terms of future, what's kind of your plans looking ahead, Andrew? Staying in Dresden? How does it look?
I think that for the short term anyway, yes, we're definitely in Dresden for a while. In terms of my teaching future, obviously, as a newly certified teacher, I'm going to have to have my own classroom before too long. So that's the next step. Whether or not that happens here in Dresden or happens in another city at some point in the future remains to be seen. But I think we're staying in Dresden for the near term.
Super exciting stuff. Keep on teaching. This is China Jedi, people. If you're an English-speaking teacher from anywhere in the world and you have a bachelor's degree but need an official and accredited teaching license to get a job, get a visa to teach abroad, or most importantly to learn all those things you wish you knew before you stood in front of 30-plus students, then reach now to Teach Now and secure a professional US District of Columbia license in as little as 9 months. Online in no time, low cost, high quality. Teach Now. Get in the game. Immediately receive a $100 discount off your tuition by signing up to the Teach Now program via the link www.teach-now.edu/China Jedi.
May the smile be with you.